Hey y'all, welcome to the Black Teacher Project podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Cecelia Gillam, joined today by my fellow Black teachers and leaders, Dr. Lena Hamilton and Lisa Harton. This is a space created by and for Black educators, where we speak truth, share stories, and stay rooted in our purpose. Every episode, we gather in conversation to reflect, resist, and reimagine what it means to teach, lead, and thrive in schools and systems that were never built for us. So pull up, lean in, and let's get into it. All right, hello and welcome. I have two great people, great educators here with me today. So let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. Well, first I'll start with me and then I'll come around to you all. So my name is Dr. Cecelia Gillam. I have been teaching for 19 and a half years. I currently teach AP Environmental Science and Honors Biology at Benjamin Franklin High School in New Orleans. Random facts about me that I can tell you is, I am an ed tech guru. I love all things ed tech. So anything ed tech, digital design, graphics, I'm your girl for that. I love those things. And then lastly, why was I called to this profession? That's the thing that I'm still trying to find out to this day, but I definitely do believe it was a calling because every single time I tried to run away from this calling, it came back to me and it continuously flowed. So I think that I'm in this profession to help bring true change to education. All right, so let's go, Lena.
Oh, hey, glad to be here. I'm Dr. Lena Hamilton. I have been teaching for 26 years. I'm a P12 educator, so I've spent time in each grade level from pre-K up through senior level, secondary level, high school. I primarily teach, I sit mostly in the English and literature world, but I'm a reading specialist, so I have spent time doing reading intervention and working on literacy skills and secondary education. Random facts about me, along with being an educator, I'm a professional poet. So I have two writing groups that I work with, Rhode Island Writers Colony and Roots Wounds Words. Those are two groups that are special for me, that I hold dear in my heart. And I was called to this profession. I think that my mom said I was born saying the words "It's not fair." So I think that I'm called because I have a deep drive to bring justice into our world and society, particularly and specifically for Black children, but also because my grandmother, my Nana, was an educator, and I admired her. She was one of my best friends as a young person, so I wanted to follow in her footsteps. So I'm going to tap in Lisa.
Hello. I'm Lisa Harton. I am a first grade teacher in Indianapolis, Indiana. This is my 19th year in education. I took a break when I lived overseas from education, but I was glad to get back into it. I'm originally from Philadelphia. I always have to give a shout out to my hometown. Um, Random facts about me. I'm also a writer when I'm not in front of the classroom, and I find that is a great outlet for me. Why was I called to this profession? I've always worked around children, whether it was as a campfire girl leader, whether it was a big sister, whether it was the nursery at Spelman for work study. I've always found myself working with children, even though I did not think it was my calling. But I come into the classroom with the mission of providing the best education that I can to learn and grow with my students because people invested in me. I want every child that I come across to know that they come into this world with a gift that nobody else has. And we have to do everything that we can to prepare them to give that gift to the world. So that's me.
All right, that sounds so great. So thank you, Lena and Lisa, for those introductions. So now let's get into our conversation. So What are your thoughts about where education is going? Either one of you can answer.
I'm both hopeful and fearful. I'm hopeful because I see the talent in my class and in the hallways of my schools every day. The genius that the children have is just amazing to be a witness to. But I'm also fearful because the institution has always been one that we could use as a pathway to success, but it has also been kind of bittersweet because we know the things we have to navigate to make it happen. And now it seems with the onset of so many obstacles, be it the movement to privatize public education or the movement to censor what we teach in the classroom, it just seems like we're going down a path that I'm not sure how we'll make it through. But at the same time, there's always been obstacles, and we've always found a way to make it work for our community.
All right. What are your thoughts, Lena?
I think I love the words that you chose, Lisa, this idea of hope and fear. I think that those, if I were to think of the poles of the emotions that I'm having also as an educator right now, we carry the wisdom of our ancestors with us. So there's a deep understanding of the price that those before us paid to have the privilege to be educated. And then what was passed down by generations as a gift to our children. And I see that there, community-wide, we still see such a benefit in this gift of education. The fear is where the lines become blurred, right? Where our pockets of community come up with a broader community. And so nationally, the sense that if it's faster, if it's quicker, if it's is it worth money? Like those things are crowding out. So in the most basic way, just the allure of a capitalistic society is pushing out the beauty of critical thinking and knowledge building and sharing within community. So I think that's one thing that as educators that we see happening and we've seen happening for decades. I think the more pernicious fear that I have is that there's a decided interest in squashing critical thinking, particularly for the Black community. We find ourselves being, I'm not even going to say people of color, I'm going to say that Black community, that we are a threat to those who would hold on to systems of power that have historically kept the privilege, the money, the power of those in this nation who had it in their hands. So the colonizers who came, those who run the systems, they want to hold on to it. And it seems that their efforts to take the reins are working. So yeah, there's a lot of fear in that. But the hope is that we've seen this before. So we have ancestral knowledge, like at a blood level, we are able to understand the strength of our communities and of ourselves as a people. And I think that though we may have gotten like a little bit atrophied, right? Our muscles may have been atrophied, that very quickly we're able to jump back in action. And I agree with you, Lisa, that there is such beauty in our classrooms. I mean, our children, our legacy, those that we teach, the next generation, they are capable and they are willing and they are ready. So they're, even though things look dire, perhaps it's just time. It's just time for us to say we've given you these tools and it's time to start building. And so there's hope in that. I think that's what I think about in these days.
Okay, and I definitely, to kind of piggyback on the line of where you were going, I feel like there is just this concerted effort to dumb down the citizenry. Because as you touched on it, critical thinking skills, like so many kids just lack that. And as educators, we see it. And like I know in my classroom, I try to correct that, but then I get corrected by administrators for trying to teach these kids some critical thinking skills. And so for me, I'm definitely fearful because these are the kids who are going to be our futures when we start to, die off, or when we start to get older. But if they can't make or think their way out of a wet paper bag, like what good are we doing as educators? But I also think that that's starting to make room for the agenda that they're trying to run here. Oh, we don't need the Department of Education anymore because look at what it's doing now. But it's because you are tying our hands. We are not able to actually go into the classroom. Again, I said I've been teaching 19 years. I know when I first started teaching, I had a lot of autonomy, like in how I taught, what I was going to teach. I had parameters, obviously, but as far as the labs I wanted to do, but now you fast forward to like maybe year 17, 18, I'm getting told by our curriculum coaches, our administrators, oh, we need everybody doing the same thing in the same way. Excuse me, is this a factory? You know what I'm saying? Like, where are we trying to go? And so for me, it's just that fear. But we need more educators to start stepping up, but everybody's afraid to open up or say anything, because if you do, you get put on a list like me. You get blacklisted, and so they hold what they call it, the carrot and the stick in front of us and just let you do just enough. But at the end of the day, it's the children who are suffering. And especially our black and brown children, because they are the ones who unfortunately are being left behind. Even though George Bush came with No Child Left Behind, we in fact left 1 million children behind. Then with the race to the top, we still didn't get everybody to race to the top. You know what I'm saying? And so all of these legislations and acts that they came out with, we're still at the same point. But like you both said, there is hope, because as African Americans, as Black people, we know what we need to do. It's just that we need everybody to start rising up and understanding that there's a new assignment that we have been called to do in order to, get our children to the next level.
And I think Lena mentioned like that atrophy. I think that teachers are exhausted because the hits are just coming from every direction. And this is where organizations like the Black Teacher Project play a major role in rejuvenating and feeding our tired spirits. It creates
Amen.
a space where we can come together and connect and support and uplift each other for this mission, for this new assignment that we have. Because the people who are on the front lines, you're isolated, you're lonely, you're being attacked, and you're tired, and you're trying to figure out, what can I still do? What can I still do that's worth something in this class? And sometimes it's just shut my door and take care of my own. Right. But we know that's not enough, right? We know it's not enough to shut your door in your classroom and do what you need to do, because what about the kid next door? And what about the kid down the hall? So I think it's critical that we stay connected in organizations like this. I'm thinking of Carter G. Woodson, right? When he would go around, that fugitive pedagogy, that was in action, when they were under far more harsh situations than we could ever imagine. So, yeah, it's a time of fear, but it's definitely a time of hope when we can make connections such as this.
I'd love to, I want to echo and join in what Lisa is speaking about, which is, I think you touched on this idea of what piece of advice would we have to new Black educators in the profession. And there's the two strongest pieces of advice I would have is like, get you a group, like find your people, and do it fugitively, right? Like figure out who's in the building, who are going to be your people, and you stick by them, right? Find a place to get restored. It's a marathon and not a sprint, right? If you're in this, you're in this for a lifetime. So find your people. And the second piece of advice I would give is remember what you're here for. Don't get distracted, right? So there's a way in which it is a machine. right? This machine of education will get you distracted with some nonsense. Will get you distracted with, you on your pacing guide, did you, whatever the systems and routines are of the particular building you find yourself in, there are distractors that are going to be thrown out that will get you to not focus on what the purpose is, which are the children that are in front of you. And if you get to your people, they'll remind you when you forget. I mean, there have been plenty of times when we're not being recorded, when we enter into this space with each other. This is like the sacred geometry right here of the sister circle. And we're tired. This has been a year where I have come into this space and I have said, I don't know if I can do this. And the sisters in this group, thank you. Y'all remind me this. What are you doing here? Like, remind yourself, Lena, what you're doing here, because there's a purpose in what you're doing. Without Black Teacher Project, I would not have found my people, my group. And so y'all sustain me. You keep me going when I don't think I can keep going, and remind me, don't get distracted. They don't get distracted. They would have you distracted. They would have you off your path. And when we can get to that place when we need it, then you can keep going. So that's what I would say to our Black educators coming in. Find your people and remember your purpose. Do not get distracted.
And I would just add to that. It's funny, I did a presentation, Find Yourself, Find Your People. And I won't do the find your people part because Lena, you did that justice. But you also have to find and maintain relationship with yourself, because you're not good to anybody. You're not going to service anybody if you're not functioning. So take care of yourself. That would be the advice I give to new teachers. Make sure you prioritize yourself. And it's not about spas and pedicures and manicures, although it can be, but it's about making sure that you are okay. Mm-hmm. That you don't owe your health to anybody. Right? So know when you have to sit down and then know who to find when you're ready to stand back up.
Yeah. And I totally agree with, again, what both of you have said here. As a teacher mentor to new teachers, I always introduce them to this poem. It's called Find Your Marigold. The One Essential Rule for New Teachers is by Jennifer Gonzalez. She's over the Cult of Pedagogy. And basically it's saying that in a school building, you're going to have all of these different personalities, but you just have to go and make sure that you find, that marigold, because as my dad used to always say, wide is the path, but narrow is the course. And you have to understand, like, you're coming in there to teach. Students should be your main priority. That's what I have always said, especially in my later years. I'm like, I am here to work for students. The adults, yes. However, at the end of the day, I'm going to always do what is in the best interest of my students and not the adults. And that's hard sometimes, especially as a new teacher, because you're torn, because you got the person that's over you, that's giving you this directive, but because we're in the classroom with the kids and we know that this activity may not work for my group. Yes, it might work for yours, but it's not going to work for mine. And then just understanding when you should speak up and when you should keep your mouth closed. Because sometimes I have to also tell myself, there's a better way. But like you said, Lisa, you can go in your room and you can close the doors. But there might be some teachers who are like me, where I tried that mentality, but they kept coming in my door. Like, my door cannot be shut. And they were like watching me and everything that I was doing. And then at some point, like you said, you got to be okay with you and never be afraid to reinvent yourself and walk away from a situation that's not suiting you. I know that we love the kids, but at the same time, like I told people when I left my last job, I can't pour from an empty cup. If my cup is empty, I'm not doing anybody any good. And so sometimes as educators, we are conditioned to believe, but I got to do it for the kids.
Right.
But do we? I mean, we are doing it for the kids, but like I'm saying, not to the detriment of yourself and your health. And especially if you're working in a toxic environment, sometimes you have to go and seek out your marigolds and get, to the other side.
May I share something that I learned from, her name is Dr. Erica Buchanan Rivera. And she said she follows the 3 Ps, her 3 Ps. She says you have to know when to push, you have to know when to pause and check yourself, and you have to know when to protect your peace. And that just sums it up in a nutshell, what we've all been saying in these last few minutes.
Definitely the 3 Ps. I learned that, and I wish somebody would have told me that in my earlier years. So at least we're giving them the game now, so they don't have to go through all the heartache. That's what I tell my kids. I'm trying to give y'all the game now, so that you don't have to go through what I went through.
Mm-hmm. I feel like before Black Teacher Project, before I was part of this org and hooked up, I was sort of floating on my own, trying to survive. I'm a teacher who I might spend like 5, 6 years at a school, and then I move on. So like when I feel myself getting disgusted with the institution, I like my it's like note to self, time to move on, because there are children everywhere, and that's one way to do it. That's one way to do it. But when I was able to hook up with the folks at Black Teacher Project and find my people, um, I I guess what I'm piecing together is the wealth of all of our voices together, and the bringing forward all of these tools and the knowledge is a sort of sharing that does not happen with educators at large. It is specific and particular to Black teachers, this sort of sharing of information and um, tactics for sustainability, right? How do we keep each other on the path where we don't forget what our mission is? And so I'm just really, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that.
Thank you. And Lisa, would you like to share about how BTP impacted your ability to sustain in this profession?
I think in addition to all the amazing professional development I've gone through, with the design process, culturally relevant pedagogy, the Black teacher leader and sustainability, just all of the excellent professional development program. Black Teacher Project has reminded me of who I am. And it has reminded me that my well-being is important, because I was of the mindset of, I'll work myself to the bone to get it done, because it's that important. And it is that important, but so am I. And so I think what I carry around and what I walk away with from BTP is, you are important. And then on the flip side of that, sometimes we put on this air of invincibility, and we can do it all. And it doesn't matter what they say, because I got this. But when we look in that mirror, that big question mark looms above. Do I really have it? But I think the best thing I like and I take away from our organization is that they make sure that you are worthy.
Okay. Yeah, spoken very well. And so what I'll say how BTP impacted my ability was, first and foremost, I always tell people this. They saved me, because at the moment that I found BTP, I was at the lowest point. And I'm sure many Black educators can identify with this, where you have achieved your master's and you have your certification to be in administration, and you start going on all of these interviews. And a district that I was working with kept hitting me with that dreadful email. We went with a more qualified candidate, but please continue to look for other leadership opportunities. And so I just remember one day I was just so heartbroken, right? Because that is heartbreaking when you keep going and you're like, well, dang, am I just not good enough? So I said, let me Google more leadership opportunities. And lo and behold, I found the Black Teacher Project on leadership and sustainability. And I was like, okay. And then I noticed that they had a box where if your school is not willing to pay for this, we can provide you with a scholarship. So I was like, I put into my little message. I was like, my school is not going to pay for this, but I really do want to learn, how to become a better leader. And then I can say the rest is history. In a moment that I got in that Zoom, it was just electrifying to be in a room with Black educators, it felt so different because I was working in a district where I was one of few, and sometimes I was the only one. And so that within itself is draining when you are working with people who don't look like you, they don't think like you, and then they make you feel less than because you think so differently. And so I always tell Dr. Misha Mosley, like, you all saved me because I was ready to throw in the towel because I was tired. And then, of course, I had other external people at that time, like making me feel like I was less than because I wasn't around the right people. Even though I was around my students, the people in my circle at that time who are no longer in my circle was also like, see, you're not good enough either. And then just to go into those meetings and listen to them. And I always tell them, I'm like, that workshop was when we had a bad hurricane. And I would drive to the Walmart parking lot. That was just how loved and just appreciated that I felt being in that space, that I was driving literally to a Walmart in the dark to go to those meetings, because that's just how impactful. And now I seek to bring other educators that I see, because, once you go through something, you can recognize, even though other people, they don't recognize what they're going through. Like, no, sis, listen, let's pause. Let me get you connected so that I could bring you in, because it took the village to get me. And I'm happy because I feel like the reason I'm still in education is because my work is not done. I've had opportunities to where I could leave the classroom, but I said, no, I think my work is not done. And like a lot of that is because I know that representation matters. And it also aligns with like the Black pillars for BTP, where you have quality instruction rooted in Blackness. Some of those kids need to see like the Blackness, because when they see me, you see the Blackness, you feel the Blackness. And I know some of y'all can kind of speak to that. So y'all want to add in like how the pillars have impacted your teaching or anything you want to elaborate on?
I just quickly just want to say, like, the power of community. Not only do our children need to see, excellence rooted in Blackness, but we need to see it too. I attended an HBCU, and after graduation, I connected with the Peachtree Urban Writing Project, which is a part of the National Writing Project, but it was all Black teachers. And I had not, until I ran across BTP, I had not found that type of community since. And I didn't know how much I needed it until I was immersed in it. And it just felt like home. So in addition to, preparing, the members for what they need to do outside of the project, you have to get that nourishment yourself as an educator.
I think it's going to be a day of me agreeing with Lisa that this idea of that we can somehow pour into our students what we are not regenerating within ourselves is a fallacy. We are human. Although, and we know it, Black educators appear to be superhuman because of our ability to move and shape all children in a way that is unique to Black educators, as we know through recent research that's come out. We need that support. And I also felt like I was just hanging in there when I did the fellowship first, with BTP, and it was just amazing. I would say that the pillar that I am finding myself really leaning into and getting excited about is the quality instruction rooted in Blackness, and specifically some work that I did with a book study group with or a review of the literature really with Black Teacher Project under Joseph. We looked at scholarship, and we looked at what are the elements, and try to distill what are the characteristics of quality instruction. Like when we say quality instruction rooted in Blackness, what are our Black pedagogies? And it was so, for me, I just felt so excited to see that the literature pointed to and supported what my classroom looks like. That we have this intuitively and intrinsically embedded in our structures. And I have no doubt it's because I sat at the feet of my grandmother. Like that was the classroom that I observed and did my The very beginning of my educational journey when I was still an undergrad, I was observing my grandmother's classroom. But I I find that exciting. I find that exciting that we have these echoes and it's like in our blood. That's these reverberations that are making their way into our classrooms. And I do know that I tell my students specifically, like these things that I am teaching you as far as how we conduct ourselves and we move through the world and how my classroom is shaped is because of my Blackness. I think it's important for them to hear that. I'll wear my t-shirt to school. When other educators who are not Black look at me sideways, I'm like, oh, let me tell you about the research. Like, I'm not just saying this because I'm ego tripping here. This is some reality. Like, let me give you I had a woman push back at me at work, and I said, oh, no, no, no. She was like, well, I understand how you could think that. And I said, oh, it's not just that I think that.
Mhm.
Let me give you some research. And I had to run it down to her like twice. Like she didn't want to hear it. And I said, no, this is research. Like, let me explain this to you because you need to hear this. I think it's good for children to hear that, all children to hear that. What you have stumbled across in this classroom is probably the most important thing that will happen to you. And let me tell you, so this seed can be in you that you can then sow in somebody else later
Yeah.
on.
Mhm.
So I just love it. I mean, for me, that's I know I need the other pillars, but I
Mhm.
am so excited by um, the inspecting what this means. What does it mean to be a Black educator? What does it mean that we've developed these pedagogies? What is quality instruction? How do we continue to influence how that makes its way through the building with our fellow educators? So I love that. I'm all over it, like the nerd that I am.
No, this is true. But, and the other one that I lean into a lot is Black identity development, especially with my Black and Brown students, because they have been conditioned almost to hate themselves to a certain extent. And they sometimes don't even realize that they are not accepting of their Blackness because in educational spaces, we always have to lower who we are. And I'm telling them, no, we come up, we rise. We are not going to lower who we are because, or just because they say that, oh, you come off as pushy or bossy, because that's what they love to say about Black females. It's like, no, we're passionate. And when we're passionate about something, you're going to feel it. And then, and I tell them that it's okay, to do those things. And I remember when I did the fellowship, that was the number one thing that I leaned on because where I was teaching at, they didn't realize that they could go on to become engineers or that they can go on to become like nurses because they didn't see people in the Black community that were doing those things. Where I was working at, what they saw in the Black community was, I got to go sell drugs. I got to go work the corner, or I got to go work at Burger King, McDonald's, because and I don't knock any of that because, that their families work there. But I'm like, but maybe you should see this because again, they never saw themselves in such a role. And so I took upon like, okay, this is going to be one of the things that I do is make sure that they can see themselves in something outside of what they have been accustomed to, because a lot of times we get stuck because we think that that's the only way or there's no way. Or we have, unfortunately, they have some Black people who don't necessarily believe in education, which like I tell my kids all the time, I don't think that everybody has to go to college. I will never sell that. But what I will tell you is everybody should try college to see if that's something that is for you. And if it's not, at least you could say you tried it to give yourselves opportunities.
Mhm. And also, I think, in addition to, Black identity, knowing history and everyone's contribution benefits everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, I was talking about, I think, some of the lineage in Banneker, and this white boy remarked, I didn't know Africans were smart, right? And I was like, oh, yeah. What makes you say that? So when we introduce everybody's story, everybody benefits.
Yes.
Absolutely agreed. And I think when we talk about Black identity development, building that identity in our students is number one. But up there with that is for us to present ourselves fully for our students um,
Mhm.
across ethnicities. I think to what you're saying, Lisa, is that my students, often not my Black girls, but often other students, other ethnic groups of students are surprised by the range of who I am, because there's so much acting that Black folks do in public. And sometimes the shell of a stereotype, especially for our students in high school, is so much easier than the hurt of being misidentified. So I think being the range of who we are in front of our classrooms is such a relief for our Black students, because they're then allowed to lean out of stereotype and into the variety of who they are, which is exhausting for teenagers. I mean, they get slapped around so much by the macro and microaggressions that happen in the student body and in the educator body in our buildings, that just being there as the full humans that we are, gives them space to embody themselves fully, which is so essential to be able to be who you are in this world. So yeah, I think we don't talk about that a lot as educators, but just our physical being and the fullness of who we are, that is broader and deeper and wider than any stereotype, is so important for children. Yeah.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly 100%, agree with that. And that's what I always tell my students. I said, I will always show up 100% authentic and as myself. And I said, as long as I'm alive, I'm growing, and I can grow, we grow together, and getting them to understand it. And it's like so amazing, because they're like, I never had anybody like that's this real. Because I'm like, I'm telling them, I don't need to hide, and I don't want you to hide. Like, that's how we become authentic with another. We develop those relationships and those bonds when we are able to be honest. But unfortunately, in today's society, everybody lives behind keys, everybody living for social media, and I just try to embed into them like there's so much more. I almost wish we didn't have social media, but that's probably another conversation for another day and another time. So does anybody have any like closing remarks about, this whole conversation? I think that it was very fruitful, beneficial. Any last thing that you would like to close with?
I think that I love the idea of folks being able to hear what we grapple with as Black educators, and that I just want to call in the curiosity, and I want to call in, as you just said, Cecelia, the authenticity and honesty, that I would love to meet again and gather some questions and ideas from our larger group and continue the conversation.
I just appreciate the space to connect. I would also say, make sure you take somebody with you. Don't keep everything to yourself. Don't keep the good things all to yourself. Don't keep the stress all to yourself. Just make sure you find partnership and community in whatever situation you find yourself as an educator.
Sounds good. And I will close with the one thing that I always tell my students: be you, they'll adjust. Never adjust yourself. Because like I tell them, I can only be me. That's the only person I know how to be. And I always tell them, comparison is the thief of joy. And sit back and compare yourself. You know what I'm saying? It's okay to look out, because that's how we grow and we become better. But don't just get stuck there. And so just trying to, and even to other educators as well, I'm like, I don't compare myself, because if I did, like you said, that brings on the stress. So just be you, and everything else will fall into place. So, all right, guys, thank you. This was a great conversation. And like you said, we will be back, because this conversation has to continue. Thank you for joining us on the Black Teacher Project podcast. We hope today's conversation fed your spirit, affirmed your journey, and reminded you that you are not alone. Stay in the loop with the Black Teacher Project for resources, gatherings, and ways to build alongside others who are committed to creating communities of liberated learning for all students. You can find us at www.blackteacherproject.org and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Threads at Black Teacher Project. Until next time, take care of yourself and your people.